What up, tapeworms? You could probably guess what movie we're going to talk about today, but I feel like anybody could talk about this film. I want to do something just a little bit different. So we're going to talk about the differences between the book and the movie. It's been a while since I revisited Gremlins, so let's check it. What the hell?
They call me the Collector.
What, VHS tapes? I mean, I do got a cousin that likes to collect toenails, so you could be any number of things.
No, my passageways protrude with petrifying pages of paranormal paragraphs, tales of terror from the here and then. Books, my dear boy.
Oh yeah, these paper VHS tapes? I always have trouble getting them to play. Duh! I remember you. I used to haunt your apartment in New York. Wait a sec, wasn't that the Ghost Exodus of 1984?
Yes. Many a good fiend was lost that year.
Dude, why are you even here? This alley is already crawling with specters.
No, what about the tape crabs?
Yeah, and rats of unusual size.
When I heard you were talking about Gremlins, I couldn't help but join you over the scarewaves to share one of the most interesting experiences a novelization has to offer.
Oh, dude, like, read it with my actual eyes? Who does that?
This book has caused quite a bit of a stir in the Gremlins fandom. It was written in 1984 by George Gipe and published by Avon Books. Gipe had never seen the final version of the film and only had the original screenplay as a reference when writing the novel. Director Joe Dante was very disappointed with the final result and has gone on to say that this novel is in no way canon.
I got my book at the book fair with a Lamborghini poster, and I'm just glad that it has pictures inside, although I imagine the movie's much different than the novel here.
Honestly, if we went over all of the subtle differences, we'd be here all night. So let's just go over some of the most interesting morsels I've noticed.
Hey Collector, before we get started, on my channel we not only talk about the movie, but we also take a look at the VHS itself. And when I think of Gremlins, this is the cover that comes to mind. Although inside really isn't any special features or anything, but there is a really cool Warner Home Video logo, which I'll play here. If you're wanting the most special features, the 2000 release is absolutely jam-packed and features an awesome Halloween promo. But back to the show.
Yeah, my body is ready.
All joking aside, I'm super excited to have the Collector here with me. I would love to hear his thoughts on this book. So let's check.
No, please. I mean, normally I say, shall we begin? Lightning flashes, then I start reading, but no, please, after you.
No, after you, kind sir.
Why, thank you. Shall we begin?
You're gonna want to keep them out of sunlight. Don't ever get them wet. And no matter how much he begs, never feed them after midnight.
No, yeah, we're watching my jams.
And we're back. I'm not sure I'm a fan of these new style Ben Cooper masks, but anyways, tell me something a little bit different about the book from the film.
Now you see, in the book, it starts off with the most controversial fact about the Mogwai. According to George Gipe, the Mogwai are an alien species that were created on a distant planet by an inventor named Mog Turman.
You told me that in my inbox, and after I told all my friends, you guys were hating me for it.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
It's just my friends were really cooking my ass in chat over this, so I totally get it. The idea of a Mogwai being an alien's pretty weird, but if you really start to think about it, there's a lot of different reasons why, which I'll get into later.
After his creation of the Mogwai, he was hailed as a genetic hero across 3 galaxies. The Mogwai were sent to other planets in order to teach the inhabitants about peace and how to live a mindful life void of violence. One of those planets being Earth.
You know, I'm not really sure that worked out for him. I'll never forget the boomers that fought so hard in the Cabbage Patch Kid riots of '83.
After they were sent off, however, it was discovered the Mogwai were imperfect and had major flaws.
It's not the only thing with major flaws. You should see my stomach after I bash a Gordita Crunch.
So many poo babies.
It does kind of explain why there wasn't very many good Mogwai in the movie.
You see, less than 1 in 1,000 Mogwai remained their gentle selves.
In the movie, they're just some sort of lost animal that time has sort of forgotten, and that maybe Gizmo is the last one of them.
You forgot to brush your teeth. You got yourself a bad case of dragon breath.
Yikes, that didn't age well.
Now, this scene with Rand Peltzer won't happen until Chapter 3, and we find him in another store in Chinatown looking for a Christmas present for his son Billy. Rand states he's looking for a different kind of what he calls Gizmo.
That's that word from the movie.
Let it also be known that Mr. Wing feeds Gizmo random pieces of junk just because it amazes him of what the little Mogwai can digest.
There's a couple parts like that in the movie, like when that gremlin's eating that glass beaker.
Gizmo reluctantly eats these things because he sees how much joy it brings to his owner. In this scene, Wing feeds Gizmo a rubber washer he found in the closet.
Kind of like the DC character Matter Eater lad who can eat any substance due to the unique nature of the planet he's from, leading even more credence to the whole alien theory. And dudes, keep in mind, it is not a theory that I love, I just like harassing my friends about it. Our story begins in what looks to be the Back to the Future town.
When we first meet Mr. Futterman in the book, he's giving Billy a ride into town on his snowplow. It's here that we get a ton of exposition surrounding Futterman's experience with Gremlins in World War II, or WWII.
Why do you say that as if you were there?
He even recites a song that he and his fellow troops would sing. When you're 1,000 miles from nowhere, and there's nothing below but the drink, it's then that you'll see the Gremlins, green and gamboge and gold, male and female and neuter, gremlins both young and old. White ones will wiggle your wingtips, male ones will muddle your maps, green ones will guzzle your glycol, females will flutter your flaps.
I'm willing to bet a couple of you tapeworms have fluttered a flap or two, but continue.
They'll freeze up your camera shutters, they'll bite through your aileron wires, they'll bend and they'll break and they'll batter. They'll jab toasting forks in your eyes.
Dude, that escalated quickly. How messed up is the book? I'm gonna have a hard time getting Video Ghost to sleep.
It's here that Billy thankfully cuts Mr. Futterman off.
I'm kind of pro Mr. Futterman, although I'm not sure how he survived the snowplow thing, but hey, I'm glad he's in the next movie.
You know, I always did find it strange how it was never stated in the film that Futterman survived the plow incident.
Maybe they should have had like an after-credit scene or something that gave us closure.
Oh, but they did. If you listen very close to the news reporter at the end of the film, you can just hear him say, "We talk with one Mr. Futterman at Mercy Hospital."
Boom! And just like that, my mind's blown. I feel like I can learn a lot from you. But that's the cool thing about movies. You can watch it like 100 times and some dude's gonna come along and tell you something that you never noticed before. I freaking love that. But hey, continue.
The plow breaks down and Billy makes the rest of the way on foot.
Perhaps this is why Mr. Futterman is seen in the background of this Deagle scene when moments ago he just returned home.
We also get a scene in the book where Billy returns Mrs. Deagle's stray cat after it's almost run over on the road, and it's here that we read about Barney accidentally knocking over Deagle's imported snowman.
I love how comically evil Miss Deagle is. She has no redeeming qualities at all, and I kind of like that about her.
Yes, I know.
After the incident with Miss Deagle, Billy goes to sulk in Dory's Tavern. As a guy who spent most of his childhood drawing dragons on folders instead of having friends, I really related to Billy just doodling all the time.
Ah yes, the description of the picture Billy is drawing is quite amusing. Starting off with the Deagle-headed dragon, Billy himself represented as the fierce warrior, protecting a princess with an uncanny resemblance to Kate. In the book, we learn that Billy is heavily influenced by the art of Frank Frazetta.
Kate kinda set up all the people that I would love in my life, a bit nerdy, but emotionally damaged by traumatic events.
Now, Mikey, I won't lie. Reading the departure from the little store from Gizmo's point of view broke my cold black heart. We learned Gizmo had been living with Mr. Wing near on 40 years.
You could really tell that he didn't want to get rid of Gizmo, either for the huge responsibility that he is, but I think mostly because of the bond they have. To me, the shop was one of my favorite parts of the movie. It made me always wonder what other mysteries or wonders were in there. But it's probably for the best. We know how irresponsible everybody ended up being in the movie, just one dumb mistake after another. Speaking of dumb mistakes, why wasn't Sea Dog a bigger part of this movie? I wanted to see Corey Feldman front and center. If not in this movie, maybe in the sequel. Oh well, I guess I'll never get my dream. I did love him as Donatello, so that's a good enough trade-off. I suppose our adventure truly begins when Pete spills water on Gizmo.
This is pretty much the same in the book, although George Gipe had a different opinion about the birth of the new Mogwai.
Collector, you old fiend. Now you have my curiosity piqued.
The way it's described sounds the same way the gremlins hatch, yellowy membranes growing out of their back, which then explode into the little fluff balls.
Maybe I'll put him in my spin dryer on high heat.
Miss Deagle is clearly up to something. There's no way she's that evil on her own. But I really don't know what her master plan was.
Oh yes, did I forget to mention that? In the book, there's this subplot where Deagle is planning to sell the real estate she owns out from under the feet of her tenants to Hilltox Chemical Corporation.
With a subplot like that, I kind of feel like it would have been more like Gremlins 2 with weird chemical mutant gremlins running around. But let's focus on the voice actors themselves. Before he was showing videos of prolapsed anuses on TikTok, Howie Mandel was the voice of Gizmo. Howie, what's going on with you lately, man? I understand being yourself, but maybe you shouldn't take it there. And of course, Frank Welker was cashing in his stripe, but to me, he'll always be Sourpuss. With voice talents like that, they definitely had a script, but what were they even saying to each other?
Well, my voracious vlogger of VHS vernacular. In the book, we get quite a few hilarious conversations between Gizmo and Stripe, and also some more insight into Mog Turman's creation of the Mogwai. Take this passage, for example. Stripe was barely an hour old when he knew Gizmo was one of them. So, he said coldly, we've encountered one of the Eternal Ones. You are that, aren't you? It's not fair that you should be allowed such a long life, and we such a short one, Stripe hissed in Mogwai words. It was an accident of Mog Turman's creative process, Gizmo replied softly. I want to kill you, he said coldly, but I can't. Something is holding me back. It's the one responsible emotion Mog Turman was able to keep in us, Gizmo explained. We're incapable of killing each other.
That seems a bit off because during the poker scene, Stripe had no problem gatting a fellow gremlin, so I don't know.
We also learned that Chezwaba is a swear word in Mogwaiese.
Mikey's Chezwaba.
You see, Stripe is aware that there are things that he must know to unlock the secret of making him powerful beyond his wildest dreams.
This has me super worried about Secret of the Mogwai. Hopefully none of this is in it, although I did read that there's going to be more mystical origins, so hopefully that ends up being true. But is there a bit more?
He discovers the first clue when one of the new Mogwai, Claw, spelt C-L-O-R-R, accidentally gets locked out on the porch in direct sunlight.
During Mikey's special time, he locks me outside.
I kind of want to address something. Gremlins to me is the perfect screenplay from beginning to end. Like everything in the movie has a purpose, and there's really no scenes that feel bogged down. With one exception, and that is Kate's tragic Christmas story.
Kate's horrific Christmas tale of tragedy. It's pretty much the same in the novel, But, as it is joked about in Gremlins 2, Kate has a very bad history with Christmas.
I just don't feel like it adds anything to the movie. The movie just stops out of nowhere and tells you this exposition. I would have loved to have seen it.
More is revealed in this novelization. Her grandma died on Christmas, her appendix burst, and her dog was hit by a car. The interesting thing is, however, in the book, this scene does not take place here. It takes place around here. Only it happens inside the bar. Kate and Billy are discussing Deagle's plans on selling her real estate. Futterman, drunk, comes and sits with them, complaining about his snowmobile. Kate gently gets rid of him, and the two continue to sit at the bar. And this is where Kate ends up revealing her big tragedy.
Now, to me, all of this could have one hell of a payoff if Kate was the final girl, and everything that leads up to this ends up helping her in the end. But none of it's really paid off. I mean, it's just a minor flaw in the movie, well, a near perfect movie, but it's just a bit of a nitpick of mine. I suppose it's not the end of the world. Billy is really a character that we like and can see ourselves in.
I wouldn't be so sure. Listen to how Billy's reaction is written in the book. Knowing he was more sensitive than the average person made Billy feel better. It gave him a thrill to find out about Kate, who was generally secretive about her personal and family life.
That sort of reminds me of the movie Fright Night, where the main character is portrayed as a bit of a slimy dick. I'm glad they didn't do that to Billy in the movie.
Billy sounds somewhat of a creeper, if you ask me.
If we had that Billy, the Gremlins can just go ahead and take him now. Okay, let's fast forward a bit. What happens right here?
Well, remember our old pal Gerald? In the book, we find he and a deceased Mr. Corbin, owner of the bank, inside the vault. Gerald has gone crazy at the sight of the Gremlins, and now heralds himself as the owner of the first bank for little people, referring to the Gremlin.
Oh man, I took off my cringe glasses way too early. That sounds terrible.
One small bone to pick is this. He knows he's called a gremlin, as though it's the proper term for what they are. Here, I'm no longer a mogwai, Stripe thought. I am a gremlin. He had no idea how he knew the word, just as he had no knowledge how or why the physical metamorphosis had occurred. Those details were not important at the moment.
It sounds like the writer was in a bit of a crunch. Hey, we've all been there.
I found that to be a little bit. Really? This section of the movie takes place in chapter 15 of the book, and I'll be honest, I quite enjoyed the pacing here. It cuts between Billy visiting Mr. Hanson, the kitchen scene, and Gizmo being tortured. Unlike some shows and movies when following multiple characters, you can at times forget they even exist. Here it made me want to keep reading to get back to the next character.
Many books fail to hit that aha moment where it really grabs a hold of you. And I'm so glad that it kind of centers itself after a while.
Some differences we find here are Billy's interaction with the school janitor, Mr. Sodlaw. School is closed for Christmas break, and Billy needs to convince the janitor to let him in. When Billy finds Hanson, he doesn't have just one needle sticking out of his backside. He is described to have had at least 36 hypodermic needles sticking out of his torso. Ugh.
I can always use more gore in a movie, but I don't feel like that character in particular really deserved his death in the first place.
Also in the book, the gremlin that Billy encounters here doesn't escape. There's more of a struggle, and Billy finishes off the gremlin with a fire extinguisher.
I knew a dude that got beat in the head with a fire extinguisher, so I know that's a pretty bad deal. This kind of has this old gorehound pretty happy.
What the hell's wrong with you, man?
Oh, it's okay, Video Ghost. He was a bit of a bell-end, so he got his comeuppance. I didn't mean to interrupt. Drop us some more of them gory deets.
Listen to this. Shrieking wildly, its head flew into the funnel of the extinguisher. With such force, it tore the instrument from Billy's hands. As both the extinguisher and the gremlin struck the wall opposite, a terrible clatter was heard, followed by the rushing noise of the foam and the scream of the creature, which was unable to remove itself from the red tube. Thrashing wildly about the floor, as it was force-fed the noxious foam, it kicked, jerked, and clawed great slices out of the wall before it died. The Gremlins toss and throw Gizmo back and forth in a game of catch, and you honestly start to worry for the little guy. It's revealed that Mog Turman's law of not being able to harm another Mogwai is no longer applicable once they become Gremlins.
Oh, so that's why Stripe was able to shoot that dude. It totally makes sense now. Although as Mogwai, they still seemed pretty vicious.
As for Billy's mum, there is no gremlin in the mixer, but instead one gets sucked into Rand's orange juicer and regurgitated as a pulp.
See, it works.
To me, it feels like cut content because the prop department isn't gonna spend time making convoluted inventions as a hero prop that isn't gonna be paid off in the story.
Unfortunately, in the book, Lynn pushes the gremlin into the oven and turns it onto high heat. How the oven heats so quickly I'll never know, but in seconds we get this description. Looking back down and through the glass into the oven, she could see that the gremlin had been baked into a huge, oozy green omelette, the evil red eyes now decorating the bottom portion of the lump, like twin spurts of catsup.
The important thing is that ketchup room temperature or in the fridge.
There's quite an amusing little section in the book where Stripe is dressed up as a caroler and is singing with the rest of the group, until they get suspicious by his bizarre vocals. When one approaches Stripe and tries to confront him, he attacks the caroler and scratches his arm, before running off to the YMCA building.
Between the book and the movie, there's a lot of mention of arm scratching, so I wonder if there was an old component to the script that involved some sort of gremlin transmission or a poison or something. I don't know, just a theory I have.
In the book, when Billy is out with Gizmo in search of Stripe, he deduces that the snow is frozen water, but Stripe isn't multiplying. It's decided gremlins need warmer water to duplicate. Between Stripe and Billy leaves Gizmo holding a torch as protection while he goes off in search for the lights. Stripe attacks Gizmo and Billy jumps in, delivering a few punches to Stripe.
I think you're selling me on the book, dude. I want to see Billy and Stripe, square up.
Now, Mr. Dante has claimed that this book is in no way canon to the Gremlins universe, but I can't help but feel some of Guype's novelization was borrowed for Gremlins 2.
I brought up a couple points earlier, but you're really sending them home. I'm 100% convinced at this point.
When Billy starts telling the police about feeding the Mogwai after midnight, they have this reaction which is quite different from their questions in the movie. Let's have a listen. Now, he turns into a gremlin if he eats after midnight? Midnight in what time zone? You mean I can take this little critter to the state line where the time zones change, and if he eats on one side of the line it's okay, but if he eats on the other side, he turns into a monster? I guess so, Billy stammered. I've never thought of it that way.
What if he eats the box itself that he's in, or that gasket that dude was giving him? There's so many inconsistent Gremlins lore rules.
And is it the act of his mouth chewing the food, or the stomach digesting it? Brent added quickly, having gotten his esophageal problem settled. You know that food lays around in your stomach a while. Dismissing him with a wave of his hand, Riley asked, "How much food? One mouthful after midnight? Is that enough to make him crazy? Suppose he eats at 10 o'clock and gets something stuck between his teeth, something that comes loose after midnight. Sound familiar?"
No, that's like the other movie.
If the tapeworms are down and, well, you're down, you and I are gonna have to take a look at Gremlins 2 sometime. I just saw a wild Razzle walk by.
Well then, we'll just have to find out when we read the novelization of Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
This video is gonna be a lot of work, and it's definitely gonna cut into my short content, which nobody really wants anyways, so I'm 100% on board.
One of the fun differences in the book, which doesn't happen in the movie, is when Futterman goes to investigate why his television set is on the fritz. He spots the gremlin swinging around, retrieves his shotgun, and starts picking them off from a vantage point in the shed where he keeps the plow.
If I ever end up in a Little Rubber Monster movie or an us versus them type film, I would definitely want Mr. Futterman to have my back. Longtime viewers of my channel know how much I love puppets, and the bar scene really shows off the magic of filmmaking. I just love seeing all the wacky different things that they're doing. And I try to picture all the puppeteers and stuff, like laying on the bottom of the bar doing their thing. And man, would I love to be part of that.
The only thing worth mentioning here is the fact that the movie does this scene so much better. The book really just states how the Gremlins will drink pretty much anything, and they were being extremely noisy.
Yeah, that description would not have sold Gremlins to me, but the way it's done in the movie, I'm 100% on board with. I'm so glad this was filmed before CGI. It would have completely ruined it with computer vomit all over the screen. But what we got was something truly timeless. I mean, people are gonna watch Gremlins for years to come. I mean, God, how long has it been now? Yesterday, I saw the dumbest person on my timeline using AI, and it made me want to invest even more into puppets.
No, Mikey don't know what he's talking about.
Mikey will be right back. My puppers always has a way of grounding me when I get on a tangent. Let's discuss the cinema scene. That's a good segue.
Interesting thing to point out here is that Billy claims to have worked in the cinema when he was younger and was aware of the faulty boiler and its release valve. Otherwise, pretty much the same as the movie, only Billy, Kate, and Gizmo escape through a jammed door in the basement, and we don't get that amazing scene of the Gremlins ripping through the screen.
I used to work at a theater, and sometimes I would be behind the screen getting cleaning stuff, and I would always wonder what it would be like if the Gremlins kind of burst through the screen. It's crazy how a scene can stick with you.
We also learn of another very interesting subplot with the military surrounding the outskirts of Kingston Falls. They're planning to make an attack and flush the Gremlins out of town by the use of a fire hose, which, as we know,
a military encounter would have really jacked up the budget, but I feel like the movie works better in this small town setting where we could really focus on characters that we can relate to. Let's move ahead a little and take a look at the department scene.
We start this chapter with Rand driving back into town and finding the destruction of the cinema. It's here that he bumps into Billy, Kate, and Gizmo, who are after the escaped Stripe. This is all pretty much the same. However, in the TV department, Stripe is firing off a bow and arrow at Billy. Just as he's about to make the fatal shot, Rand comes to the rescue with the bathroom buddy, spraying shaving foam in Stripe's face. What I like about this chapter is we get to read what's going on through Stripe's mind and his schemes to finish off Billy.
Yes, dude, they pay off one of the props. The Peltzer family inventions are one of my favorite things. I need to calm down. I get so passionate about Gremlins. It's been one hell of a journey. Let's close this out.
This was so much better in the movie. In the book, Stripe doesn't have a gun. He just backflips into the fountain. And his final demise? Well, have a listen to this. Soon, hot fluids began to ooze from his pores, eyes, and the sides of his mouth. He tried to scream, but all that emerged was a guttural moan. Trapped in their brief moment of vulnerability before birth, the bubbles forming on Stripe's skin smoldered, blistered, and cracked, the grisly product of both the cool water and the hot violence of the Gremlin's death rose in a grey mist from the fountain and gradually dispersed. The final creation of the worst night in Kingston Falls history.
I did like stuff about the books, but in this case, I'm definitely going to side with the movie. The gore effects alone were absolutely amazing. And according to this article in Fangoria, they even toned them down for the film, which is crazy because these were pretty awesome. In the screenplay, it was noted that they had an insatiable hunger for flesh.
I will say that despite the differences, I did enjoy reading the novelization of Gremlins. I enjoy getting a deeper insight to who the author thinks these characters are and what they might be thinking. It makes them seem so much more real. That pacing in the chapter when the Gremlins are hatching is just mwah. However, after reading some of these passages aloud, I did find that the writing to be a little bit clunky.
From what I'm hearing, I think you might be right, but here in Oklahoma, we like to call them fools janky.
Of course, nothing holds a candle to the movie, but I'm going to say the book isn't as bad as what I was led to believe.
The whole thing about aliens just makes it a tiny bit cursed, but that's one of the fun things about it, and I'm so very glad that I picked it up. Thank you for your recommendation.
Oh, really? Remember that news report that you brought up earlier at the end when we hear Futterman is still alive? Well, listen to it again more closely.
Donald Deagle seems to spell an end to the country's chemical project.
I've watched Gremlins hundreds of times, and I've never noticed that before. Every time you watch a movie, there's always a little morsel to discover, just when you think you knew everything. I like my Gremlins just a little bit more mysterious, so I'm really glad they didn't stick to the whole chemical plant thing, and definitely glad they didn't stick with the whole alien thing, because that would have just been bizarre. Although they do grow out of these alien-type pods, so maybe there is something to it. Well, Collector, my old fiend, thanks for teaching me the true meaning of a Gremlin's Christmas or something. I'm not sure the point of all this, but I'm still glad that you came on by for one last haunt this year.
Mikey, it's been a devilish delight visiting you over the scareways. I can only hope to be invited back. So many novelizations, so little time. And, after all,
Ghouls of a feather, scare together.
Now until we shriek again, good night out there, whatever you are.
If you tapeworms want to hear more from the Collector, check out the links in the description below. Until next time, later tapeworms. If you like what I do here, slap your big old greasy hams up against the screen until they hit something.